So I thought I would do a video that tells you a little bit about how I came to be aware that I had Asperger's. Honestly, it's a lifelong story, but that'll have to be separate videos. I'll have to just kind of pare it down. So I'm just going to talk with you about the 10 months preceding the awareness that I had. My story is a little bit unique. A lot of women on the spectrum find out that they are on the spectrum or have Asperger's because their kids are diagnosed, and then they start to recognize some of the symptoms in themselves. That's not my case. I don't have kids. So it's kind of unusual that that someone comes to this awareness. So I thought I would share a little bit about the process. It's really kind of miraculous, actually. I guess I'll just say briefly that it's been, up until the last year, it's been a very long journey for me, a lifelong journey of dealing with difficult experiences and emotions and health issues, and really working so hard to take care of myself and to understand myself and to get better. So that, like I said, is going to be another video. But to fast forward to about a little over a year ago, I on October 1st, I had a very sudden and severe onset of vertigo. If anyone's ever had that, you understand how bad that is, what a nightmare it is. I thought I was having a stroke. I couldn't walk, couldn't balance, and I ended up going to the emergency room. A friend took me there, and I still have the vertigo. It's not as bad as it was last year, but I still do have it. Even right now I can feel it. It's really, really awful, but it was so severe when I first got it. You can't really move. It's like you're paralyzed in your own body. So, and yet it's also hard to be on the computer. There's really not much you can do. I ended up kind of watching a lot of TV. And I think I was also doing that partly just to kind of cope with the emotions about this. It's really a really hard experience. And I think I just wanted to, one, occupy my time, but also to deal with the emotions. So I was doing everything I could do, obviously, and doing going for treatment and talking to specialists and all that, slowly getting better and better, but still, I'm still not totally where I want to be. So anyway, this was a year ago in October of 2012. And around May, I just had the sense that I was using too much television, that it had become like an addiction for me. And I had this inspiration. I felt like I needed to somehow let it go. And I was terrified. I really wasn't wanting to cope with, this new health problem. But something really told me that I needed to do it. So with some help and support of friends, I got rid of my cable. And I do watch Netflix, so occasionally, I get DVDs, which is a very, contained amount. But that was it. I got rid of it. I had no other TV other than that. I went through a pretty intense withdrawal process. You wouldn't believe it, but I really did. But I got through the other side. And since I was still, dealing with the vertigo and trying to get used to not watching TV, I was looking for other ways to occupy myself. And so I ended up looking into different podcasts. And I downloaded the app for This American Life. which I'd never listened to, but I'd heard it was a fantastic program. And I think it might have actually been the very first podcast I listened to, because it was right around that time that it came out. It was called Dr. Gilmer and Dr. Gilmer. It's this fascinating story of these two Dr. Gilmers. What are the odds? And Dr. Gilmore number 2 replaced Dr. Gilmore number 1 at a small semi-rural clinic. Dr. Gilmore number 1 was in jail because he murdered his father. And so Dr. Gilmore 2 was, of course curious about this other Dr. Gilmer and asking people about him, and everyone kept saying, like, what a wonderful, kind, compassionate person he was. And Dr. Gilmer number 2 decided to really explore this thing further, and he met with Dr. Gilmer number 1, and anyway, Dr. Gilmer number 1 kept saying, there's something wrong with my brain, I have a serotonin deprived brain, and I need XYZ grams of XYZ. No one believed him. He was having all sorts of like tics and stuff and movements, and everyone was saying, oh, he's making it up, because it would happen more when people were around. And he kept just working so hard to get people to believe him, and no one believed him. And years he was in jail. And then this Dr. Gilmer number 2, through some series of events, found out that the first Dr. Gilmer actually had this, I think it's called, is it Huntington's disease or Hutchinson's disease, something like that, that affects the brain. It's actually a very, very serious condition. And then they thought that his father had had it too. And this podcast struck me so hard. I felt like my cells churning inside of me, because I'd been telling people for so long, there's something wrong with me, and no one believing me. Them thinking, I look fine, I seem fine. I finally stopped trying to tell people this, because it was futile, like, I don't know, a few years ago, I'm like, it's just futile. Like, no one believes me. I tried every single method I could think of, every single way to explain it. I now know that I was explaining Asperger's to them, and they were not picking up the clues. They didn't understand. So, needless to say, here I am, undiagnosed Asperger's, and having all of these feelings come up. But it was more than that. Like I said, it was literally like something churning inside of me. And I can't remember exactly when it happened. A few days later, a thought came to me. Now, before I tell you this, I want you to know I am a very analytical person. I am a fighter. I have thought through things and analyzed things and read books and done everything you can possibly think of to get answers, okay? This was not that. This was not me thinking, analyzing, wondering, none of that. The thought popped into my brain, could I have Asperger's? Now, when this thought popped into my brain, it was a weird feeling. I think this was that first nugget of reality sinking in. When this thought came, it was almost like this tiny sliver of knowledge was hitting me. Now, I had zero reason cognitively to think that I have Asperger's. Everything I've seen is very stereotypical. If anyone had said to me, you have Asperger's, I would have said, you're insane. I would have never in a million years believed it. So again, this is not anything logical that happened. So then what happened was I was telling this to my acupuncturist, She's also my body worker. And I was telling her about this podcast and how I've been telling people my whole life and no one's listening to me. And this is where, I'm feeling really emotional. It's coming back to me, is she listened. She listened. And she listened with curiosity. And that's all I could ever ask and hope for, versus being dismissed. And I am so grateful because it changed my life. As we were talking, she was saying things like, tell me more about, your childhood and remind me, because it's been several years since we'd done like a full, extensive intake. And so I started sharing with her some things and different things that maybe I'd struggled with, or I don't even remember now exactly what I told her. But somehow the words, something about sensory processing or sensory integration came up. I honestly can't remember if she said it or I said it or what happened. And I'd been told by a previous therapist that I had sensory integration problems, but we never explored it or did anything about that. So that night I got home and I just started looking it up. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is me. I didn't know this had a name. It explained so many different things I've dealt with. And this was like the first kind of enlightenment. And then I read on a blog somewhere about this book, and I'm going to butcher the name, I have a feeling. I think it's called like Too Loud, Too Bright, Too Fast, Too Tight, something like that, which is about sensory processing. Again, I got this book and I'm reading it, and I'd never heard anybody tell my story before. And I read this woman's story, and I thought, oh my God, like she's describing me. So that was huge for me. I mean, that was such a breakthrough, to really have a name and to see in print somebody sharing the experience that you've had and that it has a name. And it's not all of the negative names I use for myself. It's not oversensitive or neurotic or any of that. It's sensory processing disorder. Okay? So that was huge. I started looking for therapies, looking for occupational therapists, all that good stuff. So fast forward a few weeks. I'm online and I'm reading or something. I don't know. I must have been searching and like reading blogs and just trying to learn about this. And of course, I now know that sensory processing is part of, some of the symptoms that are common with autism spectrum. So I'm naturally being directed online to different autism sites and, different blogs and videos and all sorts of things, books. This was another one of those nights. I'm reading it, and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's weird. And the real kicker was when, and I think it was one of the videos that I watched where the person said something about Rudy Simone's book and how it changed her life. I went on Amazon, and that book is like, I don't know, I'd swear at least half of it you can read on Amazon. And I thank God for Rudy Simone for doing that. And because I'm reading it, and I'm reading it, and my body is going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I'm freaking out because I'm like, this is me. This is me. Like all these different things about myself all together. And I always saw them as all different things. And it was like, this is me. And I knew then. Now, it's just, I guess it's interesting that that voice came to me, but yet I guess I didn't, it's not that I ignored it, but it just was processing in my body. And that was July of 2013. I found a place that tests women, for Asperger's, and I got on the wait list, and then I was tested in December, and I tested affirmative for PDD-NOS, which is basically Asperger's for all intents and purposes. Usually means that there's maybe one factor missing, or that they can't prove it, or it's not obvious. And I have a whole diary about my diagnosis process that you can watch. But I really wanted to share about just this process of coming to the awareness. It really was miraculous to me. It felt like a spiritual experience. Oh, and the one thing that was really crazy is I had shared with somebody last spring. I had been having these weird nighttime experiences where I would sense that there was like a person energy. It was a human energy in the room and blue color. And I always had the sense that they were trying to tell me something. And I would wake up and I would be like, they were leaving me a message, or there was like a sense that like, oh, they left me a voice message, but I can't get the message. And it wasn't scary, but it was just mostly annoying because I'm trying to sleep and I already have sleep problems. And I finally told this energy or whatever, I just said, listen, I am open to hearing what you have to say, but if you could just do me a favor and do it in waking hours, I would really appreciate it. I had totally forgotten about that. And then after this whole thing happened, like a couple months later, after I got the awareness, I went, oh my God, like I literally felt that this message was coming to me. So I say this, and I think people might be thinking, I don't know, I am a little woo-woo, a little crazy. So be it. This is the truth. This is what happened. And I am so grateful. I believe in my heart of hearts that I was led to this, because it was nothing that I did that brought me to this awareness, other than just keep following my intuitive guidance about it. So anyway, that's my story. I will be sharing at some point the 45 odd years before that and how I got to this place. And feel free to share in the comments below if you've had an unusual Asperger's awareness in your 40s like I did, or I can't be the only one out there that kind of got it through osmosis, So thanks for listening, and till the next video.